So Moira, we've come up onto the ridge, which is one of the really obvious features. You can see the Malvern Hills from, well, loads of places, and as you're driving down from Birmingham and things, it rises up. So can you tell me what it is that makes this landscape with the big hills in the middle?
Right, well, the Malvern Hills are very old, ancient rock, which cooled from molten magma deep in the Earth's crust and got pushed up along a line of weakness in the crust. And over the millennia, they have gradually worked their way up to the surface, being pushed up to the surface. And that, because they're so hard and resist erosion, they stand out for miles around. So it's lovely to come home from Malvern and see them from a long way off, and you know you're nearly home.
So I can't help but notice that the rocks on the west towards Herefordshire look really different to the rocks on the east towards Worcestershire. So what's going on there?
We've got completely different geology on either side of the hills. And the scenery that you've got reflects the rocks and the structure on each side of the hills. So if we're looking towards the west here, if you think of the hills have been dated as 677 million years, but around that period.
That's the Malvern Hills?
That's the Malvern Hills. Part of the history of this area, to the west of us here, there was a tropical sea, and there were sediments laid down on the bottom of the sea. We've got limestones and shales and other layers of rocks with fossils in. These got laid down to the west of the hills, and at one time there was a crashing together of two tectonic plates which pushed the Malvern Hills themselves up a bit and also folded the rocks to the west of the hills. So these layers were flat, horizontal layers at the bottom of the sea, but they've now been folded. Next to the Malvern Hills, they've been pushed up as the hills were pushed up. And further out, you've got the Ledbury Hills, which is an area that's been upfolded. And beyond that, again, you've got the Woolhope Dome, which is another upfolding of these rocks formed in tropical seas.
And so what are we looking at that's on the Worcestershire side of the hills? I can see it's very flat.
On the Worcestershire side of the hills, it's completely different rock. So after all these colliding of tectonic plates and upfolding of rocks, there was a period where the exact opposite happened. There was an extension of the area. The Malvern Hills have been pushed up along this line of weakness in the Earth's crust. On the east side of the hills, there is the East Malvern Fault. So the Malvern Hills have been pushed up along this line of weakness in the Earth's crust. When there was extension of the area, this line of weakness moved, there was movement again on this line, and a huge, great fault, the East Malvern Fault. The movement on that was to drop the Severn Worcester Basin, the Severn Valley area down 2.5 kilometres, 2,500 metres drop on the East Malvern Fault. And at the other side of the basin, there are other faults, not quite such major ones. And in between, we've got a rift valley. So it had dropped down between these two lines of faults. And at that time, we were the latitude of the Sahara Desert. And it was a huge, great, arid land area here. And the rift valley got filled in by desert sands and mudstones.
With all that folding, when did that happen roughly?
Well, that folding happened in the Carboniferous period. I am rounding it off to 300 million years ago.
Okay. And so when abouts was this arid desert-like environment on the Worcestershire side?
So that was in the Triassic. The massive movement on the fault was roughly 300 million years ago. And then after that, in the Triassic, the Rift Valley was gradually filled in with sediment, but not enough to cover the Malvern Hills. So.
Fabulous. Well, that makes a difference. You can now see that you've got all these different landscapes. So when you're having a walk along the hills, you can look to one side and see that, imagine that shallow tropical sea and all the things building up, and then the subsequent folding. And then if you look out to the other side, you can imagine the desert environment.